To learn any new skill or gain expertise, you need to practice, practice, practice. There isn't much debate about that. In addition, scientific research shows that the quality of your practice is just as important as the quantity. This concept can be referred to as deliberate practice. In other words, deliberate practice is a highly structured activity engaged with a specific goal of improving performance. From my personal experience, I think of deliberate practice as the years of knowledge obtained through coaching, repetition, and copious amounts of experience or time in a sport or a specific task. For example, in terms of track and field, you do not become great at block work as a sprinter if you are unaware of your own measurements in terms of where your feet need to be against them. In other words, block work is just one single aspect of sprinting, which means you start to understand the idea that becoming skillful at it overall would take some time. Just this example alone, I can truthfully say that through years of practice, blocks can still be difficult at times. I cannot imagine someone trying to dominate the blocks without having adequate practice to learn them at all. Although practice and time can go hand in hand in developing successful skills, there is another concept to it that is very important as an addition. Research shows that the quality of practice is just as important as the quantity, if not more. Therefore, the theory is that deliberate practice is not only time-specific, but it is also focus and effort-specific as well. Without giving complete focus and attention to the tasks that are practiced and working towards specific goals and everything completed during that time, practice is not deliberate and the mastery of a skill will not be acquired.
In relation to motor learning and deliberate practice, the activation of the mirror neuron system is extremely beneficial. The mirror neuron system is made up of the superior temporal sulcus, the posterior inferior frontal gyrus, the rostral inferior parietal lobe, the intraparietal sulcus, and the medial frontal cortex. With the use of video playback or observation of another athlete and the addition of specific cueing, the activation of the mirror neuron system allows for greater learning outcomes. Mental practice is also a great tool for improving performance or learning outcomes. Going through each motion and seeing the goal of the task in your mind before the physical task activates the mirror neuron system, activating the same motor neurons in the CNS as if actually completing the task, improving the deliberate practice. A study from Wright, Bishop, Jackson, and Abernathy, 2011 in Neuroscience Letters, they saw the activation of the motor neuron system in expert and novice athletes with an fMRI while watching a video of another person completing a task and a point light representation clip.
The dramatic differences in performance between experts and novices are attributed to the disparities in recorded amounts of deliberate practice. But the question to address is whether the deliberate practice is as important for explaining individual differences in performance, like being subpar or elite. But what does elite mean? Elite is defined as a person or group superior to others. If you initially perform at a level above your peers, how much deliberate practice is truly necessary to become elite? In a study conducted by Lombardo and Diener in 2014 on sprinters, indicates, and I quote, one factor which is a strong predictor, probably a precondition for elite sprinting performance is exceptional speed prior to training. 2, this exceptional ability is at least partly specific to sprinting. And 3, many elite sprinters reach world-class status in far less than 10 years, although they usually make modest improvements even after that. So, is innate ability truly insignificant to deliberate practice? When studying chess, factors like dedication is huge because they do not compete against their peers, they compete against all ages, which leads to high dropout rates. Not to mention that IQ also plays a role in this highly strategic game. Another factor is how early a child begins to play and learn through play before they begin deliberate practice. This aspect proved to be significant when referring to chess, with the possibility of it being due to brain plasticity.
A study that examined deliberate practice was with 3 different groups of Belgian soccer players. Professional, semi-professional, and provincial players all completed a questionnaire evaluating the relevance and frequency that deliberate practice had on their development as players. Helson claims that players at the highest level take part in deliberate practice more than provincial players, hence the reason that there is a difference in skill. Professionals put in 5.2 hours of practice a week, compared to the 3.1 hours a week that provincial players completed. Within those hours of practice for each level, Helson states that professionals were with their team, trainers, or both team and trainers when practicing, whereas provincial players spent most of their time practicing individually. This comes back to the point that immediate and quality feedback on how to improve skill from others and aiming to meet goals during the time of deliberate practice is imperative to the development of proficiency in a task. Provincial players who practiced individually didn't receive subsequent feedback and had less objectives that contributed towards building an expertise in soccer. The constructive criticism and concentration to achieve objectives are what make deliberate practice so important to player development. The use of deliberate practice can also be applied to a skill such as playing the piano. A study observed the difference in skill between young amateurs, young experts, older amateurs, and older experts. There was a significant difference between the amount of deliberate practice completed weekly between the experts and the amateurs. Young experts worked on their piano skills for 26.7 hours a week, whereas young amateurs worked on their piano skills for 1.9 hours a week. All of the extra practice showed when testing different factors of playing piano. According to Crampy and Erickson, bimanual and single-hand movements were much quicker and pronounced in both sets of experts than in the amateur players. When playing a piece, the expert piano players also committed less errors than the amateur players. The amount of deliberate practice that experts take part in increases the dexterity of the hands and the overall familiarization of the keys on the piano. Not only did the experts commit less errors than the amateurs, but Crampy and Erickson also state that they committed less errors while playing the piece faster and applying more force to the keys. The noteworthy differences between experts and amateurs when playing the same piece validates how important deliberate practice is when trying to achieve proficiency in a skill.
Through the definition and the understanding of motor learning and how mirror neurons works in relation to practice, there is no doubt that deliberate practice is a key component to mastering a skill. Although studies have found that deliberate practice is not the only aspect of expertise in a skill, a combination of innate ability and deliberate practice are the best ways to achieve elite performance in a certain sport or task. Literature indicates that deliberate practice is an essential component to mastery of skill acquisition that bridges the gap between the talented and the untalented.